Welcome to The Explainer. Look, today we're pulling back the curtain on our own worst nightmares. We're going to break down the exact visual and auditory mechanics that professional filmmakers use to systematically manipulate our fear. So if you've ever sat there wondering why your heart is pounding out of your chest during a tense movie scene, well, you're in exactly the right place. Let's just dive right in.
Okay, I want you to think about the very last horror film you watched. You know the drill, right? The music fades out, the camera is creeping down some dark, creepy hallway, and the tension is just unbearable. You absolutely know a jump scare is coming. And yet, when it finally happens, bam, you still flinch. Every single time. So why do we jump when we already know it's coming? Why does our body react, even when our logical brain sees the trap a mile away? Well, it's simply because cinematic horror is an absolute masterclass in bypassing logic to target our primal biology.
Section 1. The Psychology of Dread, or the Fear of the Unknown. To really understand that jump scare, we've got to understand the slow burn first. The absolute baseline of all great horror is this creeping psychological dread of the unseen. It's like that chilling literary atmosphere captured by the fictional mad poet Justin Jeffrey, a character created by writer Robert E. Howard. The story goes that Jeffrey wrote these lines about foul things lurking in forgotten corners right after visiting a cursed village, and right before dying screaming in a madhouse. That specific feeling, that sense of ancient, hidden terrors lurking just out of sight, that is exactly the psychological state filmmakers want to put you in. And all of that creeping dread, it actually serves one biological purpose, and that's triggering the startle response. Honestly, this is the whole scientific goal of cinematic horror. By forcing you to just sit there in a state of quiet, tense anticipation, the director is essentially winding up your nervous system like a tightly coiled spring. Every single trick of light, every camera move, and every sound we're about to cover, they are all meticulously designed to violently release that spring. Moving on to Section 2, Sculpting with Shadows, Manipulating Sight. So let's look at how cinematographers actually put this into practice on set. Take the renowned cinematographer Shane Hurlbut, for example. He uses a really specific lighting trick to manufacture dread. What he does is set the camera's base temperature to 2900 Kelvin, but then he sets his actual physical lighting units just a bit warmer at 3400 Kelvin. That 500-degree offset literally strips the warmth from the image, producing this harsh, cold, gray moonlight kind of tonality. It instantly makes a completely normal room feel dead and entirely unwelcoming. Building on that cold tone, filmmakers love to use low-key lighting. By keeping the dominant portions of the screen plunged in deep, heavy shadow, they're actively hiding information from you. And what happens? It forces your imagination to just run wild. You literally start projecting your own worst fears into the darkness. But more importantly, it perfectly primes the environment for a sudden, shocking reveal. It lets them bring something horrific out of the pitch black right when you least expect it. Because you see, light doesn't just illuminate things, it manipulates us. Studies actually show that red light can literally raise your heart rate, acting as a subconscious signal for danger and violence. On the flip side, blue and green lights can actually lower your heart rate, which evokes this depressing, supernatural coldness. Master directors like Dario Argento, for instance, they use exaggerated, highly saturated hues like sickly yellows and deep blood reds to create a totally disorienting, nightmarish reality. Your body chemistry is actively being altered just by the color palette.
All right, Section 3, the anxiety of movement, camera and composition.
Beyond just the lighting, the physical placement of the camera completely dictates your comfort level. If you want to make an audience feel instantly uneasy, use what's called the Dutch angle. Pioneered back in early horror, this is a super simple technique where the camera is just tilted slightly off its horizontal axis. When that horizon line is crooked, it subconsciously tells our brains that reality itself is becoming unstable. It totally throws off our inner equilibrium. And movement is just as critical. A shaky, handheld camera injects this immediate, chaotic urgency into a scene. It makes you feel like you are literally running for your life right alongside the characters. It's pure panic. But on the flip side, a locked-off static camera, that creates unbearable suspense. When a director lingers on a static shot for just a few seconds too long, the stillness almost becomes aggressive. You actually find yourself begging for the camera to move because that lingering silence practically guarantees that something terrible is about to happen.
Section 4. The Invisible Threat, the Architecture of Sound.
Now, visuals can show you the monster, sure, but sound shapes your anticipation long before that monster ever even appears. In sound design, a leitmotif, or a signature sound, is a highly specific audio cue woven right into the background. In horror, this might be the scraping of metal or some discordant string instrument. It acts as a subliminal anchor. Once a sound designer trains your brain to associate that specific noise with danger, they can quietly play it in a seemingly safe scene and, man, your stomach will just instantly drop.
Just look at the sheer creativity of horror master Alessandro Romeo. This guy uses incredibly dense, brutal techniques to build pressurized audio. He uses sine wave shaping to squeeze the dynamics, creating alarms with zero headroom so they literally suffocate the mix. He hand draws pitch bends to rapidly scratch massive impact sounds. And honestly, my absolute favorite, he turns a simple beard razor into an oscillator. He'll press it against ovens and metal shelves just to record these unsettling experimental waveforms. He is literally synthesizing anxiety from scratch.
And to make absolutely sure you never feel comfortable, sound designers employ dissonance. By taking two audio samples that are just a single semitone apart, think like a C and a C sharp, and playing them together, the frequencies clash. This clash creates a beating effect, a really unnatural wobble in pitch that removes all harmonic resolution. Because your brain can't find a clear, predictable musical structure, you're left feeling physically tensed and completely tonally ambiguous.
But as the team at Ocular Sounds always emphasizes, silence is just as vital as the noise itself. Think about it. If a movie is just a nonstop wall of loud, brutal sounds, you eventually become numb to it. The true terror actually lives in the tiny details. A light creak in the floorboards, a breath that sounds just a little too close to the microphone. Extreme restraint and hyper-detailed small sounds build a much more unbearable pressure than constant noise ever could. Why? Because they make the world feel inhabited, and therefore profoundly unsafe.
Which brings us to Section 5, Crafting the Perfect Scare, where sight and sound collide.
So, we've set the trap with lighting, camera, and sound. Now, let's spring it. This right here is the spatial composition trap, a pretty brilliant technique highlighted by Rain Dance. Step 1, the director lulls you into a totally false sense of security with a long, calm, static wide shot. Step 2, they trick your eyes into focusing deep into the middle ground. You know, maybe a curtain flutters or a shadow shifts in the distance. You naturally lean in, squinting. Then, step 3, bam! While you were busy looking at the background, the actual threat violently enters the extreme foreground, right in your face. It's pure cinematic sleight of hand. And to make that visual spike truly traumatic, they use what's known as the Luton bus, named after producer Val Luton from the 1942 classic Cat People. This is when that sudden foreground reveal is accompanied by a massive, ear-piercing audio stinger. But here is the absolute most brilliant part. The visual threat is often entirely harmless. It's just a cat jumping onto a table or a bus pulling into a station. But because the audio stinger is so sharp, and because your startle response was already so primed, your body experiences a massive physiological shock anyway. So, we arrive at the end of our explainer today with this final thought. You are a biological instrument, and filmmakers, they're the musicians. Every shadow, every crooked camera tilt, every dissonant tone, and every sudden audio stinger is a calculated note played directly on your nervous system. So the next time you sit down in a dark room to watch a horror film, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are you actually afraid of the monster on the screen, or are you just terrified of how brilliantly you're being manipulated to feel? Thanks for learning with us, and I'll catch you in the next one.